regards to the night of September 24th, the morning of September 25th, rather, to the full extent of your knowledge, was Ms. Dawson medically examined before or after administering that test?
I have no idea.
Okay. Now I just want to talk a little bit about that machine that you used, the Intoxilizer 8000. That's what it is, right?
Yes.
That machine is not perfect, right?
There are many ways of getting the most accurate results as it can.
But a flawed machine.
In my opinion, no. I think it works pretty well.
But it has some problems with it, wouldn't you agree?
I think that there are problems possibly if the user is not trained properly, but I've been certified.
Sometimes that machine just gives you inaccurate readings.
For me, no. I've been certified and trained, so I know how to make sure they get the right readings.
I understand that you've been certified and trained, Dr. Smith, but that doesn't change the fact that your machine sometimes gives you readings that are incorrect.
For me personally, no.
Dr. Smith, are you telling this jury that every single time you administer a test that gives you a correct reading?
I couldn't have any other data otherwise.
Dr. Smith, do you remember making an affidavit in this case?
Yes.
And you would recognize that affidavit?
Yes.
Let's talk about mouth alcohol for a minute.
Okay.
Okay. Mouth alcohol is something that can cause a spike in your data.
Yes.
And it can also cause you to have incorrect numbers.
Yes.
And sometimes when you run that test, you get incorrect numbers from mouth alcohol.
That's why we have the observation period.
Hypothetically, if you gave a test and someone had mouth alcohol, your numbers would be wrong.
Yes.
Okay. And you have an observation period that you talked about on direct.
Yes.
However, you personally can only swear to 5 minutes of observing Ms. Dawson on the night of, or the morning of September 25th.
I did only personally observe her for 5 minutes.
The other person observing her was Officer Foster.
Yes.
And Officer Foster, while observing Danny, was driving a car.
Yes.
And Ms. Dawson was handcuffed in the back of that car.
Yes.
Objection, lack of personal knowledge. She's asking the witness to answer questions outside of her scope.
This has already been accepted as fact from earlier testimony, so that's overruled.
Opposing counsel makes an excellent point. You just don't know what was going on in the back of that cop car, do you?
I know as much as Danny Dawson being handcuffed in the back.
It's handcuffed in the back. But it was raining that night, wasn't it, Dr. Smith?
Yes.
And that's a pretty dangerous road, we just heard.
Yes.
And so, you're telling us that Officer Foster was properly observing Danny Dawson while driving in pouring rain in the dark on a curvy road.
Objection, now she's asking my witness to speculate.
Overruled. It's already been offered from testimony from earlier from the police officer, so overruled.
I asked Officer Foster, and as a colleague, I've been working with him for such a long time, I just assumed that he would tell me truthfully.
You assumed that he would tell you truthfully, but you made a checklist that night, right, Dr. Smith?
Yes.
And that checklist says that you are certain that Danny Dawson had no mouth alcohol in her mouth that night.
Yes.
Even though you can only personally swear to 5 minutes of observation period time.
I felt that it wasn't necessary to do that anymore. The reason why I did this was because the defendant, if you sit longer and you also make the person aware of burping or belching, typically people start to burp or belch and that throws off the results. So I just tried to do that and just try to keep it the best I could.
I understand that you didn't want to make Ms. Dawson aware, so you didn't ask her, right, whether she had any of these symptoms?
I don't remember.
Okay. And so I want to talk a little bit about those symptoms. You mentioned earlier things like burping that can cause mouth alcohol. Excuse me.
Yes.
Those things are things like burping, right?
Burping, belching, if you also have access to mints, Listerine, anything that could have alcohol in it really, and recent consumption of alcohol can also throw off the results.
And gastrointestinal events can also cause mouth alcohol.
Yes, it's like burping, belching, vomiting, just anything like that that could cause it.
Indigestion, you can also cause it.
I don't ever recall saying digestion.
Well, indigestion is a gastrointestinal event, Dr. Smith.
Part of it, but I would not say that digestion, having food in your stomach, would be the cause of that.
Well, to be fair, Dr. Smith, gastrointestinal events.
It's part of the gastro. Yes, I understand, but I would not say a person having food in their stomach would throw off the results.
However, did you say that gastrointestinal events can throw off the results?
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
And indigestion is a gastrointestinal symptom.
It's part of the It's part of it, but it's not the only thing.
And you are not aware that Ms. Dawson had any of these symptoms as you signed off on your checklist, that you were certain that she did not.
I felt no need to wait another. It was 20 minutes on the right there, and then having to wait another 15 minutes, that just increases the chances of a gastrointestinal of it happening.
Sorry, Dr. Smith, maybe you didn't understand my question. I'll
Okay,
rephrase.
sorry.
You didn't think Danny had any of those symptoms that night.
No.
And if it came to light later in trial that Danny did have some of those symptoms, your numbers would have to be reanalyzed, right?
You could say so.
I want to talk about, just for a minute, you've analyzed hundreds of these test subjects, right?
Yes.
And you were surprised at the results of the test, weren't you?
I kind of make a bet with myself to see how far off I am on the results. I'm usually pretty bad and not very good at guessing where the people's numbers are. It's just not one of my things. That's why I use the machines.
But you were surprised, weren't you, at Danny's result?
Like I said, I'm horrible at guessing people's various sea level. I had this bet with the machine to see how close I can get, and I'm losing the bet horribly.
And so, even after all those hundreds of individuals that you've tested, you thought that Danny's breath alcohol content would be around the legal limit, didn't you?
Like I said, that's why we use the machines. I'm horrible at guessing this.
Ask the witness.
No need for a redirect, Your Honor. I ask the witness to be allowed to step down.
Step down. Witnesses from the state.
No, Your Honor, I just want to say this.
We'll go ahead and take a brief recess before moving into the investigation sheet.
Yes, sir.
We'll convene in 10 minutes, so at, we'll say 17.